Good evening, I'm Anna Kalczynska and you're watching World News Tonight, coming to you live from Warsaw. This is a historic summit on a historic day. NATO has adopted 5% for defense and has identified Russia as a long-term threat. What does that mean for Poland, the region and the world? More on that in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at the latest headlines. Zelensky met with Trump. We discussed the most important issues. A second Polish astronaut at space, historic flight, and there's also space money at stake. And an archbishop with a sinister plan to overthrow the government in Armenia. Does Russian President Vladimir Putin have ambitions beyond Ukraine? Possibly. He's confused, but he really wants to end this war, said Donald Trump during the press conference ending the NATO summit. Regardless of Putin's true intentions, all countries bordering Russia understand they need to invest in security. Today's pledge of increased NATO spending, paired with the F-35 fighter jets that the UK has purchased from the US, could mean extra protection for all countries on the alliance's eastern flank. Kazimierz Łysiak reports.
Where are you from?
I'm from Ukraine.
Oh,
so my
wow.
question to you is whether or not the US is ready to sell anti-air missile systems Patriot to Ukraine.
Are you living yourself now in Ukraine?
My husband is there.
Wow.
And
I can see you're very, it's amazing. Is your husband a soldier? No?
he's,
He's there now?
yeah,
Wow. That's rough stuff, right? That's tough. And you're living here?
in Warsaw.
And you're a reporter?
I am.
Good. So let me just tell you, they do want to have the missiles, okay, as they call them, the Patriots.
In a rare moment of facing the harsh reality of war, US President Donald Trump spoke with a Ukrainian journalist at the Hague NATO Summit about the possible sale of Patriot missiles to Kyiv. Trump has also met with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky on the sidelines of the summit, but a breakthrough in the peace process is still far from here.
Did you discuss any ceasefire in this Russo-Ukrainian?
No, I wanted to know how he's doing. He was very nice, actually. We had little rough times sometimes. He was, couldn't have been nicer. I think he'd like to see an end to this. I do. I think what I took from the meeting couldn't have been nicer, actually. But I took from the meeting that he'd like to see it end.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte spared no praise for the US leader and his blunt approach to defense spending, which forced the alliance's members to agree to a 5% pledge by 2035.
I mean, would you ever think that this would be the result of this summit if he would not have been re-elected president? Do you really think that 7 or 8 countries who said, yeah, somewhere in the 2030s we might meet the 2%? We've now all decided in the last 4 or 5 months to get to 2%. So doesn't he deserve some praise?
Currently, only a single NATO ally is close to reaching 5% GDP on defense. Poland is aiming to get there next year.
I remember when I came here, we had 4 countries that were up to 2%, and I remember Poland was there. A couple of them were there, and but most of them were. We had 28 at the time, as you know. It's increased a little bit, and they've agreed now to more than double their budgets in all cases.
Such big defense spending is crucial, especially for Eastern European countries, which are the closest to Russia. Poland has been advocating for the 5% pledge for years. Now its voice is being echoed by the entire alliance.
In a couple of years' time, we will be having a stronger European pillar of NATO, which is absolutely fundamental that we are able to effectively deter Russia and defend our territory.
A big part of deterring Russia from a potential invasion of a NATO country is the nuclear umbrella. The United Kingdom knows that all too well.
We have now taken decisive action in relation to the F-35. That's the right decision for our country. It's the right decision for NATO. And it really comes to an important point in a volatile world where we do need a stronger, more diverse, resilient security.
The 12 F-35 fighter jets that the UK has purchased from the US will allow them to carry American nuclear warheads under the NATO airborne nuclear mission. This means extra protection for all countries on the alliance's eastern flank, a wide push for security while peace is still out of reach. For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łysiak.
We'll be back to give you the latest and the highlights of the summit in The Hague soon with our correspondent Alex Kadje shortly. But now let's take you to the space. I take with me a piece of each of you, your strength, your hope and your trust. For I am not alone in space, I represent us all. With these words, Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski addressed the Polish nation shortly after liftoff, calling for unity and national ambition to develop the space industry. He is the second Polish astronaut in space after Mirosław Hermaszewski's mission in 1978. Today, sharply at 8:31 a.m. Eastern Time, Axiom 4 headed to the International Space Station, some 400 kilometers above ground. Sonia Gatabiszczan has more.
3, 2, 1, ignition.
History in the making.
For three nations, a new chapter in space takes flight.
After nearly 5 decades, Poland returned to its pursuit of human spaceflight. The country's mission, Ignis, meaning fire in Latin, signifies a revived Polish spark in space exploration.
Today we are taking a huge step toward Poland's technological future, a Poland based on science, knowledge and vision. May this mission mark the beginning of an era in which our courage and determination shape a modern Poland for us and for future generations.
The Axiom Mission 4, which includes the Polish astronaut, launched on Wednesday. Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski is the second Pole to go to space. On board the International Space Station, the craft's final destination, he is expected to conduct 13 scientific experiments designed by Polish companies and educational institutions.
From different fields of science, it is biology, biotechnology, material science, engineering, of course the space technology, the different kinds of materials that we will be testing. So this is one of the parts. Another part is of course the human research experiments, a very important part of experiments to take care of the health of astronauts, of the future of astronauts and the future of exploratory missions.
The mission is expected to last 14 days, and the station's environment, microgravity, that is, the state of near weightlessness, is essential for conducting some of these tests.
For example, how the brain behaves in microgravity, we have to check in microgravity. To see how the algs will behave in microgravity, we need a microgravity. We don't have microgravity on Earth except those vomit-comet planes.
Aside from a scientific return in the form of the experiment's findings, the Polish space mission is associated with other advantages.
All of these experiments were built in Poland, so this creates jobs, this creates high-level engineering that is very important for the future of the country.
Uznański-Wiśniewski falls in the footsteps of General Mirosław Hermaszewski, the first Pole who went into space in 1978. Although Hermaszewski passed away in 2022, a patch from his spacesuit is now in space with Uznański-Wiśniewski, ensuring his legacy lives on as Poland returns to the final frontier. For TVP World, I'm Sonia Gatabiszczan.
With Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski's current mission, Poland marked an important milestone in its space ambitions. A Poland based on science, knowledge and vision. The Ignis mission reflects the country's growing commitment to investing in space technology and innovation. More now in Jan Kennedy's feature report.
For three nations, a new chapter in space takes flight. Godspeed, AX4.
As Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski becomes Poland's first astronaut to join a mission to the International Space Station, the country and its growing space sector has been put into the spotlight.
This will open up our entities, open up our scientific institutes for easier international cooperation. It will give a boost to technological development.
Poland contributed approximately 65 million euros to Uznański's mission amidst an investment surge in the space sector in recent years. And experts say these investments are already delivering returns.
The European Space Agency operates on so-called geo-return, which means that whatever a country puts into that organization, it gets about 80% back in contracts for its industry. So that money comes directly back, and it helps Poland to innovate. It helps Poland to grow its space sector and other sectors.
Between 2023 and 2025, Poland earmarked 360 million euros to space-related initiatives, including Uznański's mission, which the Polish Minister of Technological Development says will be crucial for innovation.
These technologies that we are working on in connection with this mission are extremely important. And this, I think, will be a stimulus for our scientific centers to further develop and catch up with the world's best centers. Well, also vital is the fact that the Polish economy needs innovation. It needs the transfer of modern technologies.
And in uncertain times, developing the space sector isn't just smart, it's strategic.
Space sector is a dual-use technology, meaning that it can be used for both civil and defense matters. It is an expensive sector, so the involvement and support of the government is crucial here.
And with the government's blessing,
Poland must invest in science. Poland must invest in innovation and in technology.
It looks like Sławosz's journey is just the beginning of Poland's space adventures. Jan Kennedy for TVP World.
So as you see, history written in this Polish space program, and a historic day for NATO as well. We are with our allies until the end. This is what US President Donald Trump says about Article 5. This is the basic principle of NATO: all for one, one for all. Alliance leaders have announced today a landmark pledge to commit 5% of GDP to defense spending, and the pledge to increase spending follows in the wake of repeated calls by Donald Trump for Europe to shoulder more on the burden of its own security, given the war raging in eastern Ukraine and fears that Russia might attack another European country. Let's go now live to Alex Cadier, who is in The Hague, where the two-day summit took place. Good evening, Alex. So exactly what happened today? What are the highlights? And is the alliance back?
Good evening. Well, what we have from sources inside the room when the leaders met is that they have been describing the birth of a new NATO. That is the level of unity that was felt in the room, and, of course, the level of relief because of the US president's contribution to this meeting. Of course, historically, he was extremely frustrated with the NATO alliance because of the level of spending done by allies, done by the United States. We'll show you on your screen in real terms the amount of money spent from NATO allies, and you can see the United States, they're way ahead of the pack. But of course, when it comes to defense spending, it is very clear that these leaders were talking about spending as a percentage of GDP, and the target adopted today, 5% of GDP by 2035. That is hundreds of billions of euros on defense from NATO allies over the next few years. 3.5% of that on defense spending, traditional defense spending, 1.5% on infrastructure, and on preparing societies for a potential conflict. It is a historic moment for the NATO alliance. There was a fear that Donald Trump will walk away. Instead, he had this to say about the alliance.
If it couldn't have been nicer. I think he'd like to see an end to this. I do. I think what I took from the meeting couldn't have been nicer, actually. But I took from the meeting that he'd like to see it end. I think it's a great time to end it. I'm going to speak to Vladimir Putin and see if we can get it ended. But look, these are brave people. They're fighting these wars all over the place. You know, last week they had, I guess, close to 7,000 young soldiers, Russian and Ukrainian soldiers were killed, 7,000 in 1 week. It's crazy. It's crazy. So I'll be speaking to Putin.
So that was not what Donald Trump had to say about the NATO alliance. What he said in that very same press conference was that he had come here to The Hague because it's something he had to do. And he leaves with a different feeling. He said he was moved by meeting NATO leaders, particularly European leaders, and how much they loved their country. He described NATO and said, it's not a rip-off, and we're here to help them protect their countries. A significant shift in the position of the US president. So this was a difficult task for European allies of NATO. The next step, of course, will be how to spend the money, how to spend it together, and how to prepare for a potential conflict in Europe.
Alex Cartier from the capital of the Netherlands. Thank you so much, Alex. The Armenian Prime Minister says that law enforcement in the country have foiled a coup attempt. According to Nikol Pashinyan, the plot was extensive and insidious, orchestrated by what he called criminal, oligarchic, clerical circles aimed at destabilizing the country and seizing power. The opposition, however, responded that the arrests are a power grab on the government's part, aiming to deal a blow to its political opponents. Ovidiusz Nicieja has this story.
Armenian law enforcement has arrested 14 people, including prominent Archbishop Bagrat Golstanyan and other oppositionists, on terrorism charges. Dozens of houses have been searched. According to the authorities and recordings released by them, the group planned to cause chaos by organizing sabotage groups to block highways and detonate explosives.
Law enforcement officers prevented a large and sinister plan by the criminal oligarchic clergy to destabilize the Republic of Armenia and seize power.
The opposition, on the other hand, says it's an audacious move aiming to weaken the government's opponents 1 year ahead of parliamentary elections.
It has nothing to do with a coup or an attempt or whatever the current government is trying to portray this entire process. In recent days, we've witnessed a deeply troubling escalation of political repression.
The arrested Archbishop Bagrat Golstanyan led a movement that last year demanded the resignation of Prime Minister Pashinyan. The reason were concessions to Azerbaijan in Nagorno-Karabakh, over which the two countries fought a war, resulting in an Azerbaijani victory. The experts are clear. The latest developments in Armenia expose a whole range of the country's issues.
Armenia's insecurity as it relates to external threats from Azerbaijan, etc., are now matched by internal insecurity and a political insecurity, where the government is perhaps moving to preempt any real challenge from, say, Russian-backed actors.
The Kremlin has called the alleged coup attempt Armenia's internal matter. In recent years, Armenia has been trying to distance itself from Russia and move in a pro-Western direction.
Continued push by Armenia to join the European Union and other westward moves have angered the Kremlin.
The key question is how Armenian authorities will navigate the increasingly complex internal and external situation. The next parliamentary elections are scheduled for June 2026, and a heated campaign ahead of them is expected. For TVP World, Ovidiusz Nicieja.
And now let's come back to the first and the most important issue today, in what will go down as the Hague defense commitment. NATO agreed today to 5% of the members' GDP for defensive goals. It's a sharp increase and a bold answer to the quickly expanding Russia military capabilities. Will that be enough as a measure of deterrence? Is NATO acting fast enough to stand to the rising Russian threat? We'll discuss this with former NATO Deputy Director for Defense and Security Cooperation and current independent NATO and international security expert, Gerlinde Neuhaus. Good morning, good evening, madam. Good to have you on our show.
Good evening.
So let me start with the strategic implications of raising defense spending target from 2% to 5% of GDP by 2035. How might this reshape NATO's posture?
Well,
I think from the outset, I think it's aligned to our strategic needs as Europeans, as an alliance, because these 3.5 in defense spending plus 1.5 for related security and defense-related costs is actually derived from the capability targets as they were approved by defense ministers in June. So far so good. Also, when you look at the language from the summit declaration, it is a bit firmer in comparison to what was in the Wales pledge back in 2014. So allies now say they will allocate at least 3.5 of GDP annually. But like everything in NATO, I mean, this is not really enforceable. So in the end, it will depend on everyone's goodwill. Yeah, and we have already heard. I mean, Spain, Slovakia, and behind them probably others hiding, saying they will find ways of doing. Meeting these capability targets with much less, and also this 1.5 of defense and security-related investments will probably lead to some, let's call it creative accounting. So nations will try to do a lot of wiggling. There's talk about an old idea of the Italians to finally build a bridge to Sicily, which could get a military implication. So I think we will have to see what nations will do. There will be certainly those who will go ahead. I mean, Poland, the Baltics, also now Germany, I think, is determined to do it, but others, I think, will have to monitor very closely.
Exactly.
And then
so there's the breakdown that you were talking about. What challenges and opportunities might those member states face now in order to allocate these new funds effectively?
Well, the 1.5 is a broad basket, if you wish, because it allows for infrastructure, cyber resilience-related aspects. So you can see it from the positive angle to say, well, this is relevant if we want to have also a resilient society. But of course, the risk is that then some allies will interpret that very widely to actually, use civilian projects to give them an artificial military angle. Yeah, and then if I may just add, I think also the deadline which was agreed, 2033, is far too late. I think we certainly need much more sense of urgency. A recent study from CSIS, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, has found that Russia tripled its attack between 23 and 2024 in Europe. So we are running out of time. Yeah. So the only other good point which I see in the way this defense plan is now framed, it also gives the link to Ukraine. So refilling gaps in national equipment given to Ukraine counts against the 3.5 benchmark. And providing new supplies to Ukraine counts against the 1.5 benchmark, and that clearly helps Ukraine.
So I hear you, and we hear also Spain, Belgium, Slovakia, all those countries' reservations previously and even today. But on the positive note, all countries have signed the paper. Do you think it's just a paper, or is it a real commitment?
Well, look, I don't have a crystal ball, but as I said, when nations agreed to the pledge in Wales back in 2014, it also took them roughly a decade to get to the 2%. So my concern really is that it may now again take them a decade to get to the 3.5, probably with a lot of creative accounting. And that's the time we don't have. I think we have to assume that the level of risk-taking Putin will make in the years to come will only increase, also because the whole process coincides with the US looking into reducing its presence in Europe. And that will come quicker than many of us may think it will.
Well, with Poland already spending almost 5%, it's 4.7%, and Eastern European nations also, like the Baltics, pushing hard. How will this uneven starting point affect cohesion within the NATO? Could it accelerate deeper military and industrial cooperation?
Well, I think that's something we have to do very closely together with the European Union to actually work towards a defense production which is much less fragmented, much bigger in scale, and much more joined up. Yeah? Because we are collectively losing out so much in this. In individual nationalistic approaches, which are simply inefficient. Yeah, so I think that's a trend I'm seeing. There will also be a number of multilateral projects which were agreed on the margins of the summit. The Commission is close to having the European Defence Investment Programme being agreed, which also will help to instigate joint procurement. So there is that momentum going on, which will help the Europeans. But as I said, there is no guarantee that this will happen. We need to keep the pressure on our governments to keep it doing.
Pressure on our governments. Now I would like to ask you also about the pressure on Moscow. In light of President Trump stating Vladimir stopped this ridiculous war, as he says, he employed this word, and insisting that Putin must end the conflict as soon as possible, what concrete diplomatic or military tools could NATO realistically employ right now to reinforce that message from the US and pressure Moscow?
Well, I mean, that's a very, if you wish, a very sad point, because since 2014, or at at the latest since 22, NATO should have developed a coherent Russia containment strategy. So all these years were basically lost, yeah, because one didn't dare to do it because we knew that there were, of course, diverging views amongst allies. And now, of course, with President Trump back in the White House, it is simply too late, because we now have a president in the US who is cozying up with Vladimir Putin, who connects with him as one strongman to the other, and there is no talk in NATO whatsoever on a Russia strategy. Yeah, so that's one of the strategic deficits, I would say, we observed at the summit, in addition to the fact that there was no real strategic discussion with Ukraine. I mean, President Zelensky was largely, and Ukraine as a topic was largely sidelined. The alliance made some effort in having a SecGen press point with him and inviting him to the NATO Defense Industry Forum. Fine, so he had a forum, if you wish. But unlike previous summits, Ukraine was not center stage, nor was the issue about a strategy vis-à-vis Russia. And China wasn't the topic either. So many topics of strategic relevance which were not discussed at this summit.
Right. If I may slightly disagree, there is the talk on sanctions, at least. So the sanctions never materializing so far, but still, yeah, it is a tool that could be employed.
True. Those are tools, not NATO tools, as you will know, but tools from the European Union, and they are preparing the 18th sanctions package. But of course, the sanctions would be all the more powerful if the US would finally agree, or if President Trump would finally agree to the sanctions package, which the Congress has been preparing under Lindsey Graham, and advocating for that since long. So, but that's still pending, and he has not made up his mind.
All right. I guess we will have to see and see for yourself and see for ourselves, and the time will tell us how the situation develops. Thank you so much, Madam, for joining us today, this evening here on World News Tonight. Thank you so much. And coming up right now is On the Record, where former NATO spokesperson says the summit pleased Trump and deterred Putin. So thank you so much for watching us here tonight, and please stay tuned to TVP World.